Ed Paget here from edpaget.com. In this video, I'm going to show you 5 great ways to stretch your groin. The question is, why do you want to stretch your groin? Well, these little pesky muscles down here, they get tight when you sit for too long and when you drive for too long. And there's not just one groin muscle, there's quite a few in here. And there's one in particular though that can cause real problems. It's called the Adductor Magnus. And the reason it can be a problem is because not only does it bring the legs in here like this, adductors, but it also rotates. And if it's up here, if your leg's up here, the adductor magnus will be one of the muscles that pulls it behind, just like a hamstring. But if the leg is behind, the adductor magnus is one of the muscles that pulls the leg up, just like the hip flexors. So that's why it's common in sports people to have a groin injury, because that one muscle, the adductor magnus, is involved in so many different movements of the hip. All right, now we're going to find out how we should stretch it. First thing, we're going to go old school. Step out to the side, one hand on the hip here, push downwards, you'll get a little groin stretch. And with that, you can hold that for, let's say, 30 seconds, and that's what we would call a static stretch. You can enhance it by lifting up the hand just a little bit and going a bit further into there. Now, with some of my clients, I find they get a pinch on the outside of the hip, just here. And so what I tell them to do is step forward slightly and out. In that way, you actually stretch these hip flexors and you can negate that pain that you get on the outside of the hip. Because commonly, that tightness on the outside is actually a tight hip flexor, not a problem in the hip joint. All right, so that's stretch number 1, old school. Now let's make it a little bit more new school, dynamic stretching. I want you to step out to the side, take the hand up, push this one down, and then step back. So we're lengthening this group of muscles, and then we're using them to come back. We're strengthening them. So yes, we can push off this leg, but I also want you to kind of pull your legs together and pull your pelvic floor and sort of core upwards as you come out. And that way you actually start using the adductors on the side that you're stretching. With this, I would do sets of 10 or 15 until I feel this area re-engaged and a bit looser. Stretch number 3. We're going to use a small platform like a chair or something like that, and we can put one foot onto the chair. Now, if my hips are pointing this way, my foot's pointing out this way, I've got a groin stretch. If I lean just a little bit more this way, my pelvis drops and I start feeling a more focal stretch here. So I would say this is a top-down stretch to the groin muscles. So I can move in and out like a dynamic stretch, or I can simply hold it like a static stretch. Maybe bring this arm up over the top. We can also stretch that by moving the foot from the bottom up. So if I was to move this foot inwards and outwards, hopefully you can see that. If I move this foot in and outwards, you can see how that is going to move my whole leg and start moving my hip, which is up here. So now I've got a bottom up stretch to the hip. Okay, good. So that's stretch number 3. Stretch number 4, we'll get the old groin stretch back, and we'll give it another bit of life, bit more invigoration. All right, I'm going to stretch my left leg now because I've done my right one enough. So we're getting into the old groin stretch, and I've got a chair, the back of a chair, back of a couch, treatment table or something in front of me. And I've pre-stretched it now in what we call the frontal plane, which is going left and right. But if I take this hand and I go back over my hip, now I've stretched it more in what we call the sagittal plane, going forwards and backwards. And then I can take it back, take this hand here. Now I've stretched it in the sagittal plane still, but into flexion. So this is into extension of the hip, this is into flexion of the hip. Those names really don't matter too much. All we need to know is that we're moving our pelvis forwards and backwards whilst holding the groin stretch on. And that takes it to a whole new level. Again, I would do 10 or 15 of those, do it both sides if both groins are tight. Last stretch. Stretch number, hang on. We did 1, 2, 3, 4, stretch number 5. Okay, this is called the Frogger. Some of you may have seen this before, but essentially you're going to get down on something that's not solid. It gives a little bit, right? And you're going to take your knees wide apart. Now you'll notice that I've got my legs, well, kind of wide, And you can take your feet out wide if you want, or you can bring them in. For me, I prefer them in slightly. My groin is a little tight. Then from here, you slowly take your butt down to your ankles or the floor behind you, and you'll notice that it tightens up onto your groin. Once you're in this position, I want you to engage the muscles. So you're going to bring your knees together, but they're not going to move. So that is called an isometric contraction. So I'm going to hold, really squeeze in here, and I'm going to do that for about 5 seconds. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Then I relax for 10 seconds. And during that relaxation, I can go a little further into the stretch. Turns out when you contract the muscle like that for 5 seconds, there's a reflexive loop that creates a relaxation in the muscle which allows you to stretch further. And so this is kind of a little trick or a little hack, if you like, to get a faster stretch into the body. So contract for 5, then relax for 10. But now I've loosened off my groin with an essentially a static stretch. There can be a change in my performance. So if I was just about to play a sport or something and I did that and I got up and did it, my hips might not fire or be coordinated as much as they were prior to that stretch. So static stretching has been shown to actually lessen performance. But that can be corrected by simply doing a few functional movements. So let's say I was about to go running. I would then simply jog or just practice like bringing my leg up, getting both sides re-engaged, re-energized, back with the kind of firing motor pattern of the sport I'm going to do. So bear that in mind. Static stretching can change performance, but moving dynamically just for a couple of minutes will actually negate the effects of static stretching when it comes to your performance. All right, hope you enjoyed that. If you did, I want you to click subscribe if you're watching the YouTube, or follow if you're watching the Instagram, and the more followers I get, the more videos I can make, and if you subscribe, you will not miss any of these videos. Remember, lifestyle is your medicine.